And good evening. It is June 25th, 2025. Can you believe that we're already 4 days into summer 2025? And after that first day of summer, it has definitely felt like summer since. So nobody can complain about, well, I guess you could complain, but nobody can complain anymore about it being too cool or too rainy. Man, if you liked heat, this has been a great couple of first days of summer. Today's guest is Shaun Terhune, and Shaun is a landscape and wildlife photographer based right here in the Great White Mountains of New Hampshire. And he's going to be talking about his business, his explorations, his pictures. He's got some fantastic pictures that we're going to be sharing here. And coming up, some of the future podcasts that we have on July 9th, Nate Alberts of North Country Community Radio is going to be joining us. And also my friend Rob, also known as Doc, of the Newfound Lakes Association, will be joining us. And later in this podcast, after we talk to Shaun, we will hear from Colleen Eliason, who is in charge of membership, sales, and public relations at the White Mountains Attractions Association. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, let us welcome to the studio, Shaun Terhune. Shaun, how are you in this fine, warm day?
Hey, I'm wearing a heavier shirt today. My employee had the air conditioning cranked up here at the gallery, so even though it's hot, feeling comfy in my flannel, thinking about fall already. It's good to be back, though. We had a great chat a couple of years ago, and it's pretty cool what you're doing with the live format.
Thank you very much, and it's great to see you again. And we did have a great chat. That was, believe it or not, that was 5 years ago.
Holy smoke! So I had just opened my gallery at that time.
Yes, and been able to watch you, expand the gallery slowly but surely, and been able to watch all the adventures that you go on. So this is pretty cool that there has been a gap of direct communication, even though by social media you've been watching. And so yeah, why don't we talk about that? How you just opened your gallery, in Littleton, and some of the things you've done since then.
Yeah, I opened up a fairly sizable gallery in 2019 right on Main Street here in Littleton. Mm-hmm. And the gallery was just to feature my photographs of the White Mountains. So for anyone that doesn't know me, I make a living doing photography here exclusively in the White Mountains region. So I have a few other photographs that you'll sometimes see in the gallery here that are from Maine or Vermont or other parts of New Hampshire, but like 95+% of what I'm doing is right here in the White Mountains. So I guess I'm an appropriate guest for your podcast.
Absolutely, because that's what the podcast is. All interesting people who make the White Mountains great. It's like, because there's a lot of cool characters like yourself to talk to.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I wasn't sure at what point we had that chat on your podcast years ago. So 5 years ago, yes, I would have recently opened up my original gallery. I don't even know how to really refer to it now because we have right next to this big room that I'm sitting in now, just offset from it is 39 Main Street, where I opened in 2019. And then less than a year later, the pandemic happened and we dove into all that. We weren't sure what kind of territory we were headed for. But somehow or other, we just continued to grow and grow. And we just opened up another several thousand square feet here, which is connected. So way back there's a hole in the wall and there's another hole in the wall here, which hasn't connected yet. So we're like done enough to be open, but we still have a little bit of work to do. So yeah, we've grown. The gallery is about 4,000 square feet now. And you can see, I figured I'd set up for this conversation in this room so you can see, I can't really zoom, but you can see some photographs behind me there. And you'll see the occasional kayak or moose head or, framed map of the White Mountains sort of mixed in with my fine art images, but it's primarily just a gallery for my photographs, just my pictures and whatever else I want to sell here. So, and yeah, you're right. We just opened a few weeks ago, this new wing that I'm sitting in here now. So we've been here for over 6 years, but the new expansion is pretty sizable. And if you haven't seen it yet, I encourage your guests or anyone else listening to this podcast to come check it out.
Absolutely. And we're again on Little. Sorry, just to let everybody know, we're on Main Street in Littleton. Are you located?
Can't miss it if you're going to Chudder's candy store. So if you're right on kind of in all the fun stuff, just right downtown, my gallery sits right next to the world's longest candy counter. So,
and they've expanded too. They're down in Lincoln as well. That's how big the candy counter is. They've expanded. And Shaun, as you mentioned, like you are exclusive for the White Mountains. How did that really start? So you must have obviously an interest in photography, interest in landscape, wildlife, and did you think that this was going to actually really be a career as it's grown? As you just talked about how it was 2019 when you just started in this small gallery just to sell some of your photos, and now that what you have.
Yeah, it is a little disorienting to think back to what my mindset was, a year or two before opening the gallery. I was full time as a photographer, but I was really hustling. I'm probably not the only full time photographer in New Hampshire. There are people who do a lot of commercial work, so they're going to photograph weddings, people, pets, events, real estate. And that was me. I was like, anything I could do to make a buck with my camera. I had a more extensive background before moving to New Hampshire in 2015 as a geologist. So when I moved to New Hampshire, that was shortly after I had just walked away from my career as a geologist. And so I threw myself into the frying pan. I was like, I'm going to have to make a living at this. So yeah, I was just shooting everything.
You're like, I will make this work.
Yeah.
So that's what you do with that drive. You were going to get through. Yeah.
I had just bought a little cabin in Lisbon, New Hampshire. And I believe that was 2015. Moved there with my wife, and the whole idea was like, let's just buy a cheap little house in New Hampshire somewhere. We had moved up from Texas, try to scratch out a living, keep our costs low. And I ended up getting picked up by National Geographic shortly after I moved to New Hampshire. And because even though I was doing a lot of commercial photography, my work in wildlife and landscape photography was getting noticed. And just all those weird little channels that you don't even really think anything of when you're at an art fair or you're networking with people. Everybody knows everybody. And I was able to get a job with National Geographic through somebody I knew that worked for a travel agency. Shout out to Rebecca Willie. Thanks for the gig, Rebecca. So yeah, thanks to Rebecca, and then a few years working for Nat Geo. And I didn't shoot for the magazine. I was a guide for them out west. I was taking people on trips and teaching people how to do photography, and, like field instruction type stuff. I was a trip director for them. Did that for a few years, and just thought maybe with the added credibility of National Geographic in my resume, that I could just make a go of it selling my work. So it was a complete gamble, and I think I believed that it would pan out, and that I had an idea that could go somewhere and become a livelihood. But it was definitely a gamble. 2019, we opened in June, and then probably within the year, I knew it was picking up enough steam that this was going to be it, and this is what I do now. So
and
cool.
And also, like opening the gallery, was it just a lot of people coming in, foot traffic, or did you equal it out, or was it more so like on the website as well?
Yeah,
that's kind of fascinating. Like actually, when you mentioned about networking and people that and right. It is wild. You never know really who you're talking to or who has a connection someplace. Yeah. So that's where it's pretty cool.
You'd be amazed how often you're only one or two people removed from somebody that works for a big company or a large organization or has some connections. And I know it's a tired cliche, like it's all about who you know.
Right.
Because it's not all about who you know. You have to put yourself in that position. You have to have this. I mean, National Geographic wouldn't have had any interest in me regardless of that connection if I didn't have work that they were interested in. Mm-hmm. And they liked that I have a background because they had tried to hire a lot of scientists and photojournalists and things like that. So I had been coming out of 8 years as a field geologist, and so I've always kind of worked in the outdoors, and photography just really meshed really well with that for me. And I kind of got to a point where I like, playing with my my camera here more than my actual work as a geologist. So yeah, when I got laid off in 2015 from a pretty big company I was working for in Texas, and I was like, not going back. Let's do this. So
Right. This is as another cliche goes, a blessing in disguise. You were
yeah.
laid off, kind of had no choice. Well, you obviously had choices, but this was the time to implement some sort of action and to take this field of photography. And as you said, you took any sort of gig, so it could be a wedding or a personal photographer for whatever somebody wants. And when did you know to like decide when you started to like hone in on landscape and wildlife photography?
When did I?
Right. Like, in other words, it's just that you could expand so much. And as we are going to get to some of your pictures where you just like, if you will, nailed it with some of these photos that you take
A lot of
early
lucky
morning,
shots.
middle of the day, evening as well. And that just became your focus.
Yeah. It was gradual. It was my work as a geologist that put me in places that I wanted to photograph that just got me hooked. Wildlife photography is a different layer to it. I mean, the cameras you can get now are pretty incredible. What I've got here isn't even, I know this doesn't really even look that sexy. It's just most of the time I'm running this 135 millimeter lens. It's not a zoom. It's nothing. It doesn't even have stabilization. It's just small and it's really sharp. But yeah, these cameras are great. Traveling is fun. Document your own little adventures and see what it turns into. That's where it started for me. And when I really went full time as a photographer in New Hampshire, when I started to spend so much time in the outdoors and in the mountains and bushwhacking around in the woods and trying to do my landscape photography, I kept bumping into animals, I was horribly unsuccessful in photographing them. And I realized there was another challenge to trying to capture wildlife. So now that's become a nice cat, by the way.
Yeah, you were just mentioning like, bumping into wildlife. I'm like, Jackson's going to jump up in my lap right now. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Jackson's tail. Ta-da.
Yeah, spend a lot of time in the woods, and you will start to see, especially hiking is a different pursuit. A lot of people come in my shop and they'll see the bears, moose, foxes, owls, eagles, things like that, and even little weasels and raccoons. And they're like, where do you see all they're literally looking on the walls at the photographs of these that I've captured. And one of the most common questions I get is like, how do you see all these animals? And they assume that if you come to New Hampshire or spend time hiking in New Hampshire, you're going to see these, wildlife on the trails. And you just generally don't. You have to get out in the woods. And I like to deer hunt quite a bit too. So I like to fish and I like to hunt a little bit. And a lot of deer hunters will see wildlife because they're not on hiking trails. They're out in the nasty thick brush and the swamps, and they're trying to, like side hill across mountain ridges and things like that. And you just encounter a lot more animals when you're off trail.
It is, as you done a lot of bushwhacking. I love bushwhacking myself. Just to find some, new viewpoints, the Hampshire wilderness or wherever. I just want to get off the beaten path. Nothing wrong with the beaten path. It's just fun to explore. But it is funny how within a matter of 20, 25 feet, when people talk about when they're searching for a moose, they've been looking for a moose, you will start finding moose droppings, I swear. It's like right as where you think you're not going to find it. Obviously, there are some obvious places near swamps and whatnot, but you will find markings of wild animals off the beaten path. Like rarely are you on many of the popular trails going to see a lot of wildlife, but then once you start trekking off trail, get into a good swampy area, it is wild. Next thing you know, you bump into a moose, or you have a mother moose and her calves, or calf with her. It's fascinating. Bears and all the other wildlife. And you're right. It's just when you're out there, and that's why, again, hunters, they're where you never see hunters anywhere near the trails. That's why they're trying to find their own little spot, and they will tell you where they hunt.
Yeah, everyone wants to be successful at what they're doing, and if you're deer hunting, and and you're actually in it to get some meat, instead of just waste a bunch of time in the woods, then you learn to sort of hone that skill of figuring out where the animals are in the woods. So you've got the woods, you've got trails that go up mountains that are in the woods, and you've got the rest of the woods. And start to try to break it all down. It's this fun game of like, in this vast wilderness, exactly where in those environments are the animals spending their time, and learning why they are where they are. And so it's something that it's something that, whether you're I think photography gamifies it a little bit more, but there are also a lot of bird watchers and just wild enthusiasts that want to go see animals, and it's something that that you can become better at through learning to track, learning travel patterns of animals. It's something you can really nerd out on, but most of it's just getting into the woods and then paying attention to what's underfoot, what's overhead, and you'll just start to notice things. You know, little game trails, and this looks like animals are traveling through here. Or when I'm venturing across the landscape and I encounter a beaver, an area where a beaver has made a dam, and there's this huge flooded area. How are the animals getting across that? Are they going across the dam itself, or are they going around? And you just start to try to think like an animal. If I'm trying to go to that valley or that ridge, what are they eating? And most of the telltale signs of what they're eating and where they're traveling and what they are, with the tracks that they leave, are pretty evident if you learn to just get off trail, start looking at the ground, start looking at poop, start looking at tracks.
It's true.
It's a great challenge.
It is a great challenge. And when you mentioned beavers, I was just thinking about just to the east of Owl's Head. I love going in there in the wintertime. I know some of the beaver dams have been a bit, if you will, removed, not completely removed, but where you have this wetland area, the swamp area that's been flooded. Go there in the wintertime. If anybody would like to find some interesting tracks, and just follow them. Bring your snowshoes, or if there's not a lot of snow, bring your ice skates, because there's plenty of acres that you can skate in there. You're about 7 miles in. And
wait, which Owl's Head? There's a number of Owl's Head. Are you talking about the one in the Pemmy Wilderness, the 4,000 footer?
Yes.
Oh,
yes. I'm sorry. I should have said that. Yeah, just to the east of Owl's Head in the Pemmy Wilderness. That watching that over the last couple of decades, just slowly but surely, that swamp has been flooded, and watching bear tracks, deer tracks, moose tracks, especially, that's what's so much fun about winter hiking and winter bushwhacking, that when you do find these trails, and it's just fascinating.
Yeah, do a lot of your legwork in the wintertime if you're comfortable doing that, because it's so much easier. I think one of the photographs that I sent you that you can showcase on this broadcast is did I send you the moose? I think I sent you the moose photo.
You sent me a stunning moose photo. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I tracked her. It's just so much easier when there's a little bit of snow on the ground. It doesn't have to be 2 feet. In fact, it's better if there isn't 2 feet. But even just an inch or two of snow, you start to just see. It can be startling how many tracks you'll see or how many you don't see. Like if you go out through the national forest, there's vast portions of the national forest and other extensively forested areas that have almost zero wildlife. You go out there in the winter and there's no tracks. You're like, man, nothing's living out here. And where you'll tend to see more wildlife is around water, I'm glad you pointed out the beaver thing. Areas where there's been maybe a little bit of logging, or there's younger growth, there's brush. Most animals that we're trying to locate, whether it's a moose or a deer or a bear, they're edge creatures, and they follow edges of things. So it might be halfway up the slope of a mountain, where it goes from hardwood cover to where all the spruce and the boreal forest starts. That's a common thing you'll see at elevation. A lot of times right along that line where you go from the hardwoods into the softwoods, you'll just start to see little corridors where animals are spending their time.
Yes.
And, or it could be the edge of a swamp, or maybe not in the middle of the swamp, but the edges of stuff. Animals love edges. And just pay attention to those. But a lot of the times in old growth forests where it's just like an ocean of beech and birch trees, there's not very much brush. The canopy is really closed off, so there's not a lot going on the forest floor. There's not a lot of light getting in there. there's no reason for animals to be in there because there's nothing for them to eat or very little for them to eat. So it's, here at my gallery, I have all these exciting, U.S. Forest Service flags and a lot of imagery that pertains to the wilderness and like getting way out there. But, and you might assume that that's where I'm going when I'm getting all these epic shots. But at least we've been talking about the wildlife aspect of this for a while. For the animals, I spent a lot of time in areas that have active logging, and they're just not exciting, like deep wilderness areas. I get out there, but I get out into the not as beautiful looking woods. Usually the woods look gorgeous, and you've got all these giant, beautiful trees, and you're up in the mountains. There's not a lot going on up there. Maybe the occasional squirrel.
That's true. Birds. You'll bump into some birds.
Yeah, you get into jays and stuff up high. That's true.
But as you mentioned about some of your pictures that you would send me, so why don't we take a look at a couple right now? And as we'll talk about this first one, and talk about a great capture, fox and a bumblebee.
Yeah, you asked me to send over some photos. I was like, I just kind of grabbed a few right off the top, and was like, some of these are favorites of mine. This is, I think the reason I added this one to the show and tell is to show people that sometimes you just get lucky. I can talk a big game about, this is how you find animals, and this is how far out I go, and how in shape I am, and all these mountains that I climb. But like, that bumblebee flying by at that precise moment for me to get a picture of that fox, the little baby fox watching it, was just a gift. And I didn't do anything special to get that shot other than just being there and being really patient.
Shaun, did you know it happened when it happened, or was it when you reviewed the photo do you realize that there's a bumblebee?
No, I didn't. I knew something was happening. I didn't know what it was. I was photographing this little fox and right near its den, and those are buttercups. So the flowers are blurred out because they're not in focus, which is kind of nice. It makes the image kind of soft. But I was using a very wide aperture, and I had a very minimal plane of focus just to capture the fox. Mm-hmm. And I saw, as I had my camera on the fox, I saw kind of like looking up with his nose, and it looked like he was following something. I thought maybe it was a dragonfly or a butterfly. So I just fired off some shots just hoping that I would capture whatever the baby was looking at, and turned out to be a bumblebee. And no, it's not Photoshop. It's not AI. This is an older photograph of mine. And I'm woefully incompetent with photo editing stuff. I use Lightroom. And I don't own Photoshop. I've never used Photoshop. So I like to correct for color and highlights and shadows and things like that if I'm processing my images. But I don't add or take anything away from my shots. I didn't add the bumblebee in there. And I figured I'd mention that because that is something everybody's talking about now. This AI stuff is making a confusing time for photographers because the people looking at your photos, nobody knows what's real anymore. So,
and you say that, and I thought it was difficult enough for photographers when Photoshop became like a thing. Mind you, we're going back 20, 25 years ago, and it's just been getting easier to use, and kind of its quality is much better. But then again, with the AI, I was just going to say, like, how frustrating that must be for a professional photographer like yourself, because you literally could have people question and be like, "That's not real." It's like, no, it was.
Right.
I don't.
And then I'm standing in my gallery, like arguing with someone. No, I promise you, it's real, and I just feel like an idiot. It's like, but I don't have to worry about that too much here at my shop. But generally, when you walk into the gallery, I don't know, people tend to very, very quickly pick up on the fact that these are real photographs that somebody worked really hard to go out and capture. Mm-hmm. You just have to kind of trust your instinct on that. I know the AI is getting better and better, and it's very, very soon now that we'll be looking at stuff that you just cannot tell a difference between something real and AI generated. But uncertain times. We'll see where all that goes. But obviously, in my line of work, I don't like this AI stuff at all. And most people
No.
that I talk to don't like it either. So it's like, why are we forging ahead with this technology that nobody wants? Very few people seem like they want it. So it's a bummer.
That's what's baffling to me too, especially with the AI imagery. Yeah, like you said, it doesn't seem like anybody wants it. Nobody really seems to like it. I guess it's cool. Don't get me wrong. Looking for technology wise, it's really cool, but it manipulates so much, and it undermines probably everything we stand for, or eventually it's going to be undermining everything we stand for. So I don't know. But it's rapid, and it's just weird to think a couple of years ago, like AI is going to be here all over the place, and it really is. And I just like how AI has kind of like launched itself into my phone, and I didn't even ask for it, but now it's doing things for me and pre-thinking for me, which is, I guess I thought it was cooler years ago. Now I'm finding it aggravating because it's like, oh, you want this, or you should do this. No, I can think of it myself. Thank you very much. I don't need it to be telling me.
Yeah,
like, this is true.
Amen.
It's happening.
Amen to that. I don't know. I know this is not supposed to be an AI podcast, but I thought I'd throw that in for free because it does pertain to my way of my work, my way of life, and I don't like it. So, but we'll try to find a way to live with it. So
exactly, because we're going to have to live with it.
Yep.
And this is a great photo looking northbound in Franconia Notch at the mighty Cannon Mountain in Cannon Cliff.
Oh yeah. I thought I'd throw in a black and white for you there. So that's a panoramic. It's so this actually I took in the fall. You wouldn't know. It's almost a shame for this photo to be black and white because the color version of this has like just an incredible sea of orange foliage in the valley there, and beautiful blue skies. But yeah, that's you will see some black and white photography when you come in to the shop here or you visit my website, ShaunTerhune.com. It's just my name. I included this because it's black and white. It's one of my favorites. I have prints of this. Actually, I have one on the wall right now, like 100 feet further down. This room, believe it or not, is 120 feet long. So like a half a mile.
It was that big. That's wild.
Yeah. The new room is pretty big. I've got a 6.5 foot print of this on the wall. It just stops people in their tracks. But yeah, that's the classic view looking north through it's like your windshield view as you're headed north through the Notch.
Right. Exactly. Anybody who loves Franconia Notch, they know that view quite well. And I like black and white imagery too. It's just sometimes it gets, I think it might get overdone with some photographers, but landscape photography, especially, just a nice black and white shot. I could stare at it all day.
Yeah, it just conveys so much mood. And sometimes that's what you want on your wall too, because at a time when it seems like the vast majority of photographers are operating in the online world, sharing photographs on Instagram and social media and that sort of thing. I'm not better than anyone else for doing this, but I make a living selling my stuff in person in a store. And so I'm looking for what works as a print. And when I'm in the field shooting, I'm thinking in terms of how can I capture things in wide scale, what's going to be compelling as a print. And I try not to emphasize photographing things that I think will sell because I am at the mercy of selling my work to make a living. But it is nice if it's a photograph that I find to be powerful and exciting, and I want to photograph that subject matter, and it sells well. And people still love a good black and white. A lot of times, people want that on their wall, something that you're looking at on a daily basis. The color version of this is very spectacular. And I think I have it on my website. So go check that out if you want to see the color version. It's spectacular, but it doesn't sell as well as the black and white because that blue sky, orange valley, people don't want to look at orange and blue in their living room, year round. It's a very seasonal looking photo. But the black and white just takes me home every time. It doesn't compete with the color of your rug in your living room or the sofa. It goes with anything. So I do pretty well with black and whites, and I'm continuing to produce more of them.
No moose. This is I love this one. I love this one as almost as much as I'm not going to give it away for another picture that's coming up. But this must have been a pretty exciting time to have practical eye locking with this moose. And if you don't mind, maybe giving us a general area of where you captured this moose.
So White Mountains region, and that's what it's going to say on the tag. But specifically Franconia.
Okay. Perfect.
Which there's not that many moose in Franconia. It's kind of bizarre that I got. There's some, and again, if you mess around in the woods in that area, you'll see droppings and things like that. But moose they're not widespread through the state the way that they were a few decades ago. So now they exist more in pockets. And Franconia is not an area that holds a lot of moose. There's a pretty good pocket of moose in Crawford Notch. There's a pocket of them like over in Twin Mountain,
Carroll,
Whitefield, Jefferson, Carroll. That there's like a little zone over to Bethlehem. Like that's not bad. And then you have the Northwoods region. So up by Errol and Milan and Dummer. Yes, Pittsburgh there's still a lot of moose in the Pittsburgh area, but they're not as it's not as easy to see them from the roadside as it used to be. You can't just go to Moose Valley and see a moose anymore. Where else? Franconia Notch has almost no moose. It's really weird. There used to be a decent amount of them in there. Area. Let's see. The Lincoln Woodstock area. They kind of there's some, but it's not like what I think of as being like if I'm going to go do moose photography, I want to go into an area that holds a lot of moose.
The Lincoln Woodstock area. So obviously where I am in Woodstock, it's been interesting. When I had my house built, and I'm not that far from exit 31, it was normal to see moose in my backyard. I would be mowing the lawn and feel like I'm being watched and turn around and I have this image. Pretty much a moose just checking me out mowing the lawn. And then it does seem to like the population. When I go bushwhacking in back of my house, it's the National Forest is just at the end of the association. I used to find moose droppings everywhere, but in the last 7 or 8 years, not really. Deer, yes. Moose, no. I have not.
They're gonna follow, like we were talking about earlier. They're gonna follow the food, and moose do not eat grass like a deer. They don't go in a field and graze. They eat like woody plants, and they eat bark. They eat brush, and what else do they eat? In the summertime, they'll actually dive for aquatic plants. They'll dive. They're like an aquatic deer. It's weird.
That's why you see a lot of them in the swampy areas on the side of the road, like along the Ammonoosuc River, and that's they're feeding on.
Yeah, they're in the water in the summer, and then most of the rest of the year they're eating bark. And so this is an interesting point to just touch on. Moose are thriving in areas where there's a lot of logging, and so logging is something that creates habitat because it creates those edges. It creates brushy environments where they can sneak around and not be as visible. But they love those young saplings. That's what they're eating. So even when an area gets clear cut, they'll get in after a few years when when things start growing up waist high, chest high, head high for us, and they're eating all that stuff. And so as logging has declined in most parts of the White Mountains region, but it's continued to be more prevalent in the northern part of the state, the moose are hanging on and doing a lot better in the northern part of the state. Yes, the ticks are still having an effect on them, and it's not great. Everyone talks about the tick apocalypse, which is real. Yes. But they're just they're in so much better shape when they have a lot to eat, and logging creates that habitat for them and that food. And that's one of the reasons why when you visit this area and you don't see moose everywhere anymore, a big part of that is because there's not as much logging. So it seems counterintuitive because it's very easy as an outdoor lover to be very opposed to cutting trees down. But there is an ecological cycle there, like, especially what, a lot of what's done now is selective logging, and they're doing it very artfully in some cases. and it's a part of just how the landscape is managed, and it's something to explore. You know, if you're a person, when you see a logging truck, you immediately get a bad taste in your mouth. I get it. I don't really I don't love logging. There's some going on around my house right now, and I just, my instinct is like, yeah, stop cutting trees down. But if you don't cut trees down and you don't have a certain amount of that regeneration of the forest, there's nothing for there's very little for these moose, for many of the deer, a lot of these other animals that rely on it to eat, or ground nesting birds. You know, there's a big virgin forest is beautiful, but it's not very conducive for animals to live in it. So
no, that's true. That's
it's just a little bit of a brain bender, something to consider if you love the outdoors. Don't just immediately be anti-logging. It's a bittersweet pill to see those trees come down, but it's so good for the wildlife, and if it's done right, it's just good. It's great for the land.
and when you do explore, actually, it was it's just last week that I went up this mountain to the west of Kinsman, Cooley Hill. I think it was called Cooley Hill.
Oh yeah,
Jericho Logging. We followed Jericho Logging Road. I think it was looks like about 5 or 6 years ago they logged it. And it's when you're walking on some of the logging roads, they're kind of ugly looking, but then when you do, the forest has been opened up. Obviously, this was being logged for a reason, but it's done in such a way now that like the big, massive clear cutting, at least here in New Hampshire, or actually probably say New England, those days are over. But it is very selective. You'll see these circles, these small areas that are logged, and you still see older trees that were spared, and they're left. I totally agree. Like where it does look pretty ugly, and you kind of wish it wasn't happening, but hey, it's a necessary evil that we do. And that regeneration, it is fun. Heck, when you go into the Pemmican Wilderness, the last time it was logged was 1948. That was really the last time. So it's been fun over the last 30 years, just for me, like going to certain areas, like how much it's filled in, and not realizing where I thought it was fairly dense 25, 35 years ago, it really wasn't. And now it's that much more dense. That is pretty wild.
Yeah. It's just another facet of this whole love of the outdoors that you can wrap your head around, and you can learn more about it. And you can look at the good and the bad that comes with that. But
going through all the stages of history with logging and whatnot. Since I find it wild when I go on the North Fork of the Pemmican River, where there's one of the train switches that's still there. And the last time that area was logged was 1932. So that switch is still standing. All the trees have grown up around it again. So we're pushing 100 years since a train rolled there. And it's like, but yet here we have this new cycle of trees that have grown up all around it, kind of the forest revenge.
Yeah. Oh, it doesn't look like it was ever touched.
No,
at this point.
It was something. Talking with a lot of people visiting the White Mountains, it's just weird how the last where was it logged? You just point at a mountain, all of it.
It was it was denuded. Yeah, it was completely. Yeah, it's wild. There is a rich history of logging in the White Mountains, this area, and all the where you live. Lincoln is a logging town. It was like the Wild West 100 years ago there.
Oh, it totally was. And it had the largest logging railroad in New England. And just to read about all the different steam engines that operated here, and look at the track layout that went into what is now the Pemmican Wilderness. It's like this was, like a lot of the rail beds are still there. You'll find railroad tracks. You'll find horseshoes. I did find an axe head at an area called, it was the new camp. Sorry, it was Camp 22A, and I did find an axe head. Again, this is an area that's pushing 100 years.
Wow.
Since it was logged. Axe head was about this big. And it was pretty wild. Tempted to take it. Absolutely, I was tempted. I could have pocketed it really easily. It's illegal, so don't do that. And you shouldn't, because other history nerds, are going to be going to these camps. And it is sad to think. I've talked to many local historians, and they do say like how many things are being disappeared from where these camps were. So I will tell you this: there were some water wheels, because they did have a small sawmill at Camp 22A. If you find those wheels, you may find an axe head in a plastic bag with a note that I wrote. I'll just leave it at that.
Wow.
But you're gonna have to search
cool.
around a little bit.
That's
When I found
cool.
those wheels, I'm like, okay, somebody put these here on purpose so you couldn't take. The wheels aren't that big; they're only about 3 feet in diameter, but it's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
I'm gonna bushwhack out there and go check that out and try to find that axe head, because I have a hobby interest in axes, and I collect them, and it would be very hard for me to leave it laying there. I will, but old axes, yeah, like antique axes are incredibly collectible, and to have a story that goes with the, whoever made that axe, it probably has a name on it.
I'm going to assume it was Peavy, but I didn't find a name. But it was pretty well too, Shaun, is that like where the handle went in, there was still rotten wood in there. Wow. So it was in the mud. It was sticking out of the mud. The wind blew just right. The swamp grass moved, and I'm like, that's rust. I thought it was just a rusty piece of whatever, a bucket or something. No, an axe head. When I pulled that out,
that's quite a find. Yeah, some people listening to this are probably like, why does John and Shaun care so much about a rusty axe head? But it's just, if you get it, you get it. It's a little bit of treasure hunting, and sometimes you find old dumps, and there's like ancient bottles out there and all kinds of nifty stuff. If you're into it.
Well, also, you forget about how many horses being used in the logging days. Like at this same camp, you will find about 40 horseshoes just like all in a row. Think about those horses, long gone, but going up all the skid roads, all the horses being used to pull the logs down, mini sawmill, railroad would come by. And I mean, just to think that there was actually a steam engine that went through there, it's just fascinating. And when you do find these artifacts, it's very true. It took a lot to leave the axe head, but when I did find this other pile, like somebody else went through the effort to do this. So, okay, here it's going to stay. With a note, please leave this.
Great job.
And here, well, I know we're getting a little bit short on time, Shaun. So we have this photo. What I like a lot about this photo has to be the sun, water running, green, and the snow. That's when anybody goes hiking in the springtime, because spring and winter, they like to fight here in the White Mountains. You got to get one or the other, or they combine. Like this. I find this photo fascinating.
Yeah, and it could be anywhere in the White Mountains. That is Jefferson Brook.
Oh, wow.
Yep. I was messing around up off of Jefferson Notch Road, up by the trailhead to go up Caps Ridge, and it's just one of the most picturesque little brooks. I love just hiking up and down that brook. And this was in the fall. I think this was the first snow. It might have been October. Yep.
That's some great light for October also. That sounds, well, at least maybe like my luck sometimes, like I just feel like when I try to take pictures that I'm just like losing so much light in October, but this is great.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, this would have been, I'm trying to remember, that had to have been first thing in the morning. Let's see. Yeah, sometime around sunrise. And we could teach a whole like class on how to get that look in these photos and what it takes, and the tired old saying about that is like, get out there early. That's when the light is really special. And actually, when you get that the early season snow, and then the sun comes out and hits the branches and everything's dripping. So you're in the woods and like just everything's dripping. The snow is sliding off. I was freaking out when I was taking this photo because the snow was coming off of those tree boughs so fast. I was like, I'm losing all the white. Right. And I think that moment where I get this picture, there was it was a long exposure. So it was probably a second of time that elapsed as I took this photograph. And I think the wind blew some of that. There was like sun and there was dripping and there was snow sliding off, and the wind blew a little like powdery, like gust of snow off those limbs, which makes it look a little bit more bright and magical in the background there. But
that is cool.
Yep.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Oh, this is one that you'll see as a large photograph at my gallery. And yeah, I was just going to let you pass by this one because I think you wanted to talk about the Franconia Ridge one as well. Yes.
No, I was just going to say, you said it's the fall. I'm like, wow, you really did capture that light so well. Fascinating. Just using the snow Wow, just to help amplify the light. That was a great job, Shaun. I really love that photo. That's great. And now, this photo that when I first saw this is fantastic. Anybody who's done Franconia Ridge, whether you've done it once or 100 times, this photo is wild. I'm sorry, that's my lame description, but I just find it wild. This is a great photo.
Yeah, the hikers, this is like eye candy.
Yes.
And that's what a good photograph should do. I always hope that, let me clarify. I don't think a good photograph has to be eye candy, but it should get you excited. It should connect you with a feeling. The same way that a smell will bring back nostalgia when you smell like fried dough at a fair, or like it immediately takes you back to when you were 10 years old or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Photographs can do that too. It's sort of an intangible, esoteric sort of thing, but sometimes you'll look at a scene. It might be a painting, a photograph, whatever, and if it connects you with an experience, you're like, yes, I've been up there when the light is fading on Franconia Ridge, and or I know that exact part of that trail, or maybe you haven't even been on Franconia Ridge, but you've done hikes where the light had that exact quality that you're seeing in this picture. And it just takes you home. It just takes you to that. And all of a sudden you feel like you're hiking, and you get that little surge of excitement. Like, yeah, I need to, maybe it's the middle of the winter and you're like, I can't wait till summer so I can go do a hike like that. And so you're looking at that picture on the wall and it's getting you all fired up instead of just like an exciting photo that you think was a cool shot. But it's better if it's something that you connect with. It's because it has meaning to it now. And you must be a diehard hiker because I saw you get all fired up about this one.
Well, I think my favorite is that the way the light is. My favorite time to hike on Franconia Ridge is late afternoon, evening in the summertime, springtime. I prefer late afternoon, evening hikes over early morning hikes any day. One, I generally get up at the crack of 9, but I prefer that because there are less people, and I like evening light more than I like morning light because it just seems to wash the area more. And Franconia Ridge, I've been up there so many times, and literally in this general vicinity of where you took this picture, watch the sun go down over Cannon or over the Kinsmans, and then I descend with my headlamp, and that's it. Or especially going down Falling Waters, that's a great place because as you're coming down, you're on the top of the waterfall, and just shut off my headlamp, look up at the stars for a little while. So yes, I think you nailed it with it brings you back to someplace. It's like, oh yes, I know exactly like what I felt like in different seasons, especially fall when I do probably the most hiking up there. And
this is
I
fall.
just love it.
This photo. This is fall, by the way. It almost feels like it has a summery vibe to it, but if you look real close in the valley, just beneath Garfield there, between Garfield and if you know your summits, in the right-hand side of the picture, you would need a larger print than what you're seeing on your screen right now, probably, but you'll see a little bit of foliage in the valley there. So this was an October photo, but yeah, you could probably almost feel the cool air on your legs. Right. Mm-hmm. You're up there, you're sweating your way across the ridge. You've been hot and the sun has been warm all day. But then in this moment, as the sun is going down behind the Kinsmans, and you're getting that last beautiful light, you're also feeling that chill that makes you go, oh boy, I better get down off this ridge like quick.
Right. And then when you're halfway down in the dark, you're like, I'm glad I brought pants because now I really am starting to get cold.
Yep.
That's great. A+ on that photo. So yeah, you know what? As the man who took the picture, you hit it. I think you nailed any hiker looking at this photo who loves this region. Nailed it. Fantastic work.
Thanks, man. This was a fun conversation. It's like almost that time of day right now. It's time to go out, bang out a little hike, grab the camera.
And beautiful time of year too, because we have hours of sunlight left. Still have hours of sunlight. All right, and Shaun, I know we're running out of time. I know you have someplace to be. I just want to say anybody who needs some more information, I'm going to put up your website right down here at the bottom of the screen. And also go visit Shaun Terhune in his gallery in Littleton. He's got plenty of stories and plenty of things he'd love to talk to you about.
Yeah, I'm a lot of the time I'm here in person. I also have an assistant, Justin. He's cool. So if you come midweek, say hi to Justin, or if you're here, if you're able to come to Littleton on like a Saturday or Sunday, even Fridays a lot of the time, I'll be here in person and say hi, flag me down. I'll sign your print.
Awesome. That sounds fantastic. Hey, this is a great conversation, as I knew it would be. Great stories. I've learned a lot. I know that anybody watching right now has learned a lot as well. And we will, Shaun will definitely have to pick it up again.
Awesome. Great to be with you, John.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to hop over to Colleen Eliason as she tells us what's going to be happening in the White Mountains, as there is a lot, as 4th of July is next week.
Hey there, everyone. Summer is officially here, and that means that there are lots of events happening here in the White Mountains. I'm here to share with you just a few that are happening in the next couple of days and over the weekend. First up, we've got Tie-Dye by the Pond in Waterville Valley's Town Square. It kicks off this Thursday, June 26th, and happens every Thursday through September 4th. Just bring your own shirt and get ready to add a splash of color to your summer. Theater lovers, you're in for a treat. M&D Playhouse in North Conway is presenting the classic My Fair Lady. And over in Tamworth, the Barnstormers Theater is putting on the hilarious musical Something Rotten. Both shows have multiple performances lined up through early July. Definitely worth checking out. Music fans, head to Believe in Books in Intervale for their summer concert series. On June 27th, the stage will rock with Bostix, a tribute band to Boston and Styx. Bring a blanket, grab some snacks, and enjoy the show at their outdoor amphitheater. And they have a lot of other shows going on during their Sunset concert series. Looking ahead to this weekend, Littleton is celebrating the 4th of July early with fireworks and music and fun in Remick Park. For the thrill seekers out there, June 28th is New Hampshire ATV Day, and the Mount Washington Auto Road is going to be celebrating by closing the road to normal traffic and having it open just for ATVs and UTVs. And all of the funds will benefit the New Hampshire ATV Club. Also on June 28th, it's time to celebrate White Mountains Pride in North Conway. This all-day festival has it all: music, food trucks, kids' activities, vendors, and much more. A wonderful day to come together and show your colors. And finally, if you're looking for something fun and a little quirky, don't miss the Running of the Bears 5K at Clark's Bears in Lincoln on June 29th. This is a BYOB event. Bring your own bear. Yes, that's right. Runners and walkers must complete the course holding a stuffed bear. Our family did it last year, and it was a blast, and it was really fun to see how creative people got with their stuffies and their bear costumes. And not only is it fun, but it also supports Linwood Ambulance, which is a great cause. Of course, these are just a few of the amazing events going on, and if you'd like to learn more, head to visitwhitemountains.com and see what other events are happening in the White Mountains this weekend. Have a great weekend and enjoy your 4th of July.
And I was Colleen Eliason. She is in charge of membership, sales, public relations at the White Mountains Attraction Association. And before I say goodbye, let's just support and learn about a couple of small businesses in the area. First, this is Breezy Hill Farm. My friends Sam and Mariah run this farm. We'll look at their commercial and everything.
Insects annoying you? Bond Clip Bug Protection is all natural and made in New Hampshire. Repel those biting insects. Bond Clip Bug Protection for all those who work and play outdoors.
All right, everybody, have a great night. Thank you very much for watching the Pemmy Valley podcast. And next week, taking off, as I'm going to take a little vacation, and the week after that on July 9th. On July 9th, Nate Alberts of North Country Community Radio will be joining us. And the next week, we'll be having my friend Rob of Newfound Lake Association. He'll be talking about what that association does for the protection of Newfound Lake. Have a great evening and stay cool.